In this video, I'm going to show you how to replace the valve cover on this BMW 328i. Let's get into it. In the trunk, we're going to disconnect the battery over on the right side or passenger side. Take this panel off. There's a little twist knob there. Just slide that out of the way. You can see the negative terminal. We're going to disconnect that with a 10mm wrench. Slide the terminal off and out of the way. We're going to remove this cover, use an 8mm socket, take these bolts out. Grab the cover and just slide it forward. On the sides, we're going to take these covers off. There's two clips, one on the back, one on the front. I'm just going to use a pick to get the front one up. And that should slide up. And we'll do the same on the other side. We're going to remove this AUC sensor, just twist it to the right, and it slides out. And you can see where there's some retainers holding the wiring harness down. Just pop those out, and then we'll just set this to the side. We're going to remove this wire bracket. I'm just going to grab it and slide it forward. It is just clipped in. There's no way to access those clips. Just slide that off out of the way. Using a 8mm socket, there's some screws on the side. Take those out. There's some wire retainers underneath the panel. I'm just going to use a straight blade screwdriver. Just pop those wire retainers open. Just like that. Take the wire out of there. Grab this panel. We're just going to slide this forward. Just like that. And it comes right out. Just going to clean up some of the dirt using some compressed air. That's good. Take the wire, we'll just move it out of the way. We're going to remove the cover. There's two bolts in the front and two bolts in the back. We're going to use an 8mm socket. Take these bolts out. There's another one down here. Loosen those up. You could try using a magnet to get those out, or just leave them in the cover while you slide it out. You can take those out now. And just take the cover right off. We're going to remove the coils. Just grab this ratchet and it moves up. You can disconnect the connector, do the same on the other ones. Then you grab the coil, give it a twist, and pull it out. You can label these and make sure that they go back in the same spot. This one's a little tricky to get to because of the actuator here. You can just use some needle nose pliers, wiggle that out. And we're going to move these wires down out of the way. This wire down. Right here, there's an access for the bolt for the strut tower brace. I'm just going to use a straight blade screwdriver, twist it to the left a little bit, and it pops right off. There you can see the bolt. Now we're going to use an E18 socket. Loosen up the bolt. Slide that bolt out. Take this bolt out. We're going to use a E14 socket. And this bar is going to come right out, just like that. Take this wiring harness and we'll put it back. Take the cover off the other wires just so there's more room. There's just some snaps in the front. That comes off. And pull the wires right out. Then put the wires up top out of the way. You can wire tie these out of the way just so they stay up there. Disconnect this actuator. Just push down on the tabs. Pull that off, disconnect it. Using a E8 socket, take these bolts out. Take the other bolt out. There's another screw underneath here. You're going to have to use the same socket, the E8 socket. You might have to move this wiring harness out of the way. There you go. Take that screw out and grab the actuator. Just slide it back. Harness is in the way a little bit. And it slides out. There's some ground wires right here and on the back. Use an 8mm socket. Take the nuts off. Disconnect the ground wire. Slide that off. Now this is all loose. You wanted to unlatch that if you didn't have that already unlatched. Disconnect this connector here. Just grab that and it just slides out. Follow the wires back and there's an O2 sensor wire. Just pull this out of the connectors right there, or retainers. You can see where it's connected right here. Just get these wires out of the way. This comes up and then push down on the tab. There we go. It's out of the way. This vacuum hose here, we want to disconnect that. Just grab that hose, twist it back and forth. That comes off. And pull that out of the way. Follow these wires over here. Disconnect these, just push that down. It's for the oil pressure. Over here to the coolant temperature. Push that connector down, slide that off. Further down to one of the cam sensors. Push that down. And that comes off. Take that off. Those are loose. We have to disconnect the connectors for the fuel injectors. There is some clips holding them on. I'm going to take a pick and on each side you just kind of push the clip out. Let it set to the side and we'll do the same on the back side of it. All right, now that's kind of in like a service mode. We can slide that up, but we're gonna have to do that to all of them. So once we get them all off, you'll be able to see it a little bit better. There's a total of 6 of these. All right, those are all released. I'll just slide this right out. Here we can see the clips. So these clips are pushed out. I'm just going to push these on. There we go. That's clipped on. I'll do the same with the other ones. Get those all lined back up. There we go. Those are all set for when we go to click those back in. You just take the wiring harness and set it to the side. Disconnect the connection for the air pump hose. Just squeeze the two tabs on the side, slide that out. You can disconnect it from the other side if you want to, but we're going to take this valve off anyway. Using a 10mm socket, and right next to the valve, we're going to take the nut off. There's two. Loosen that up. On the other side as well. There we go. Just going to switch to the smaller ratchet. All right. There we go. There's the nut. Take those off. Right. Pull that nut off. Grab the valve. Slide it up. And it comes right out. There's a hose in the back here. I'm just going to use a pick to release the clips. I'll show you once I get it out. There we go. There should be two clips on here, one on the top, one on the bottom. There may be a ring on here that you just squeeze. This one, it has these broken, so the clips are just like that. Put that out of the way. Using a 10mm socket in the center, we're going to take these bolts out. This is more like a stud on the side, and that's caged, so that's not going to come out of the valve cover. Right in the middle there. That one slides out. That one's caged as well, so that's going to stay. We're going to use an E10 socket and take the bolts all around the perimeter of the valve cover. Loosen those up, and those are caged, so they'll just stay with the valve cover. And the two bolts that go into this bracket on the side here, those will pull out, so take those out. There's a couple in the back that are hard to reach. And just try to get the back ones out the best you can. It's pretty tight, but you can reach them. Using a small ratchet, 1/4-inch ratchet, helps out a little bit. It's loose, and there's one more in the back. Right in the center. So one in the center and one in the corner. Get those out as well. Once you break them free, sometimes it's easier just to spin them out by hand. There we go. That's loose. Those are all loose. We're just going to pull this coolant hose out of the way. Make sure the engine's cold while you're doing this. You can double check and release the pressure in case there is any. Just take the cap off. There shouldn't be any pressure in there. Then using a straight blade screwdriver, just pull up on this little lock tab, put it in service mode, slide it off the reservoir, out of the way. You can reset that lock. I'm just going to use a prying tool and just a pry bar. Use a straight blade screwdriver if you want. Just pry that up. We're pulling this cover off. There is a couple tabs that you have to slide to the side to unlock them. And then there's a couple tabs in the front. If you just use a pick, pop those off. Pull this up, out of the way. And the harness right here, that's just going to pull up. Take these two bolts out. Use a 10mm socket for the reservoir. You can move the reservoir around a little bit. All right, there we go. It's a little tricky to get this out. There we go. And it slides right out. To make it a little easier putting the new valve cover on, I'm going to disconnect the wire right here. We can move the wires out of the way a little bit more. Just take this cover off here using a 13mm socket. Take this nut off. And take that cable off and out of the way. You can move these wires over here. Just make it a little easier. Install the valve cover. Take some brake parts cleaner and a rag. Just clean up any of the gasket area. If it's really thick, you can use a scraper. But most of this cleans up with just a rag and some brake parts cleaner. Just go around the whole perimeter, wherever the gasket material is gonna sit. Just clean that all up. And where the spark plug valleys are, just around the holes. It's nice and clean. In the old valve cover, you may have these sleeves. You wanna pull these out. I'm gonna slide these in later once the new valve cover's in. And if you don't have all of them, there may be some still in the cylinder head. You want to pull those out. On the valve cover gasket itself, the other gaskets have dowels that will hold them in place. For this center one though, there's no dowels, so this could move to the side when you're installing it. So this one alone, we're just going to use a thin coat of RTV. Make sure this surface is clean. Very thin, just around the hole right there. I'm just gonna glue this down. Get that to line up. And that's good. That'll be good. And just take these gaskets, just go over the dowel. Right there. It's gonna be like that. Now take the gasket that goes around the perimeter, get that lined up. There's a dowel right here. There's a dowel down below here in the back. That should all line up. That looks good. Take the valve cover, slide it in place. Just get back past that AC line. There we go. Slid down. Gasket looks like it's all lined up. And you can even see in the spark plug tubes, make sure those gaskets are lined up, which they are. Looks good. Take the bolts. Get all the bolts started. And then the studs. Go right there, right there. And the other center bolt right there. I'm just going to snug some of these down. You can snug the two corner ones down first. I already got that back one tight. And just go around, get them all snug. I'm just crossing these just so to tighten it down evenly. Now we're going to go around and torque the bolts to 7 foot-pounds, starting with the corner ones that have the dowels. This one first. And then the one in the back corner here. It's a little tricky to get a torque wrench in the back here. Do the best you can. That's good. And we're just going to alternate from corner to corner. And go across to the middle. And just keep going back and forth. Alternating from side to side. And don't forget the center ones. There you go. You can double check the corners, make sure those are good, and then you're all set. I'm going to take these sleeves, slide those in the spark plug tubes. So I'm going to go down, just lock in place. The narrow side is going to go in first. Just slide them in and just push them down. Do the same for the other ones. There we go. Now slide this actuator motor in place. Get the bolt started. You're going to push that in and line the bottom bolt up. To get this lower one in, I'm just going to use a straight blade screwdriver. We're just going to pry up on this just slightly, just to get the hole to line up. Not too much, you don't want to break anything. If I use a 7mm wrench, I can get this bolt on a little easier. Then I can get the socket on once it's away from the bracket a little bit. But we'll just get this snug and then we'll tighten those other two bolts. Torque those down. Get the socket on. That's just barely snug. And we'll torque these bolts to 7.5 foot-pounds. Just going to alternate back and forth, tightening these down, just so it goes in evenly. And same with that lower bolt. Now we can push this AC line down in place. I'll just clip into there. Clip into the firewall or on this side, if that came out. Now take this wiring harness, just slide it over. Get it close to where it's going to go. This wiring harness is coming over here. This wiring harness looks good. Lock that down in place. Cut this wire tie here, that was just temporary. Take this cover, slide that in place. Sure it goes over the latches properly. Lock it down. Looks good. This harness is going to go right here. Put that bolt on, or the nut. Get that nut started. Snug that down. Put the cover right over. Slides over like that. I'm going to take the secondary air valve. You want to replace the gasket. Gasket's still there. Ours is still pretty good, but you want to pull that up, put a new gasket on. Slide this valve in place. Take the two bolts, the two nuts, get those started. All right, get that started. And we'll tighten those down. Snug that down. And on the other side, do the same. Attach the hose to the air pump. Lock that down. Now the coolant reservoir, just slide this in place. Take the 2 bolts. Snug those down. And take this hose, and I'll line that up, lock it in place. If your coolant level dripped out a little bit, you want to top off the fluid level, but you shouldn't have to top off too much. Put the cap back on, connect the connector for this motor, line that in place, that's good. These ground wires, you want to get those started, get the nuts on. Snug that down, do the same on the back one. That's good. Slide the coils in place. Lock them down. Connect the connector. That's good. Do the same on the other ones. All right, that's good. Take this connector, line that up, lock it down. This hose in the back, you're gonna get that lined up, lock that down. Should snap in place. The injector connectors, get those all locked in. That's good. SO2 sensor wire connector, connect that. Push those in the retainer. Goes right there. These connectors, line this one up for the oil pressure, coolant temperature. This is going to go to one of the cam sensor right there. I'm going to take this bracket, slide the wires back in the bracket. Put the cover on. I'm going to take this bracket, slide that in place, get the bolts started, and the bolt inside here, and tighten these down. Tighten that down. The weather strip fell off, you want to slide that back in place. And take this cap, slide that in place, put this cover, get that lined up. You put the oil cap back on. Get the bolts started. And this one. Snug down the back ones. And tighten the 2 front bolts down. And snug those down. That's good. I'll line this piece up. Clip in underneath the weather stripping in the back. And get these wiring harnesses in place. Just pop that open again with the straight blade screwdriver. Go through there. Latch that down. this wiring harness, get that lined up, lock it in, take the screws, get those started. Snug that down, take the cover, line the cover up, lock that in place. Do the same on the other side. Snug down. On this side we have the air quality sensor. Push the retainers in. It'll slide in place, lock it down, and you can take this cover, put the cover on. And take the cabin filter cover, line that up. It's all lined up. Get all the screws started. And tighten these down. Connect the battery, the negative terminal, we'll tighten that down. Snug that down, give it a wiggle, make sure it's tight. It's good. Take the cover, line it up, lock it down.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.